Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Andy Sterkowitz. I'm a self-taught software developer, and in this video I wanted to answer a question I get asked quite a bit here on my YouTube channel from people who are leaving me comments asking, can I become a developer if I have ADD disorder? And this is something that's very personal to me, as I taught myself to become a software developer, and I had previously been diagnosed when I was younger, way before I became a software developer, with ADD and attention deficit disorder. And also, just to kind of give you a sense of where I'm coming from, like in high school, I was a terrible student. I had a 2.3 GPA, which is like just about a C average. And I never was very good as a student. So I struggled immensely with this. But later on in life, I was actually able to change things and turn things around and become a software developer. So I wanted to give you guys my insight about whether you could or could not be a developer if you've ever thought you've had ADD or if you've been diagnosed with an ADD. So we'll definitely dive into that. Now, if you're new here and you're wondering who the heck I am, like I said, I'm Andy Sterkowitz. I'm a self-taught software developer. I taught myself back in 2014, landed a job in 2015, and now I'm actually mentoring and coaching people full-time to get into this career as a programmer. So I'd highly recommend to hit the subscribe button below. Also make sure to hit the bell icons to get notifications anytime I put out a new video. So with all of that being said, let's dive into this here. Now, before I dive into it, I should have a disclaimer here. I'm not a doctor. I am not going to talk about what ADD is, what ADHD is, or whether you do or do not have it. I was diagnosed when I was younger. I was about 21 or 22, around that age, with ADD. I was prescribed medication. I eventually went off it. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience. If you think you have ADD or ADHD, or if you have been diagnosed with it, I would recommend seeing a doctor more than anything else, more than anything I'm going to say in this video. I'm simply going to share my experience with you of how I've overcome it and what it's like to be a software developer with ADD. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So like I said, high school, I struggled a ton. I didn't do very well. I found I wanted to do anything in the world but to do homework, to sit in class. It was extremely painful. The most painful thing wasn't that I wasn't a good student. It was that I knew I was smart enough. I knew I was as smart as my peers, but I could never take the leap to follow through on things, right? I could never do homework. I just couldn't sit in class and concentrate. It felt like I was grinding my teeth. And so when high school was over, a lot of my peers were going to school, they were going to colleges, they were all asking each other about where they were going, and I was sitting there going, well, I guess I'm not really going anywhere. And it was definitely very demotivating. Later in life, I actually enrolled in junior college. So maybe like 3 or 4 years later, I went to junior college, I enrolled in classes. I did okay at that point. I was actually diagnosed by a psychologist, or I think it was a therapist or a psychiatrist, with ADD. I was prescribed medication. That was the first time I ever did well in school. I actually excelled. With that medication's help, I eventually stopped taking the medication after about 6 months because it was not for me. I'm not about taking some of the medication that's out there in the market. That was really the last time I flirted with that. But the point is, later on, when I was about 28, that's when I found out from my friend that I could learn to code, right? So I could actually teach myself to do this. And that's when I had a breakthrough, and I actually was able to teach myself this. I spent about a year just going hard, building programs, reading books, going deep on the subject like I had never done before. And it was very weird looking back on it. Like I went from a period where I could barely do anything to the point where I was able to do this for a prolonged period of time, and obviously get to the point where I was a software developer. So for those of you who are out there who maybe can relate to my situation, maybe when you were younger, maybe even now, you find yourself very distracted. It's very hard to focus on one task. For me, I have issues where my mind just races at about 1,000 miles per hour, and I have a hard time sort of focusing on one single thing at a time. So for me, the biggest change that happened when I was 28 and I was able to teach myself software development is that I finally found something that I could focus on enough that I could find sort of like just one thing to pinpoint and go all in on it. For me, what I've noticed about just the way I think, the way I operate in terms of my brain, is that if I don't have a purpose, in the moment, right? So like what I'm doing now is I'm shooting a YouTube video, I have a very defined purpose. If I don't have a very defined purpose, my mind tends to wander into anything and everything. It's sort of like a paper bag in the wind. I'll start thinking about why we exist, existential angst creeps in. All of a sudden I go from that to something beautiful to something sad. It's just completely crazy. I don't know where my mind is going to go in the next minute. And so with that sort of problem when I was younger, I would always find some other interesting thing to do, except for the one thing that maybe was best, like start a career or something like that. And so younger, I sort of floated around. But with programming, when I learned that it was something that I could actually do and something I was interested in, because I've always been interested in computers. I loved when the internet started. I was about, I don't know, maybe around 10, around that age, when I first got AOL.com and I started getting into chat rooms and getting into email. So I've always loved that aspect of computers and the internet. But when I saw that I could actually have this as a career, I was like, some light bulb went off. And I realized I could focus on it and really do something that I love. And so the thing that really changed for me is that I got this like focus, this intense focus to do one thing, and I poured all of my mental energy into it. I became consumed by it, right? And that's what really changed for me. It changed from not really having that true sort of focus, that thing to just like barrel into, versus before I always was like, oh, well, I could do this. I think I flirted with the idea of being a journalist, getting into communications. That was my degree that I got from my associate's degree that I got. I focused in communication in junior college. I think I wanted to be a travel agent. There was like 8,000 things, but I never had that one thing where it was like, bam, I'm just going to focus on this to the exclusion of everything else. And so I think that was the main key for me. Now, I will be honest with you, just because I found this one thing to focus on and barrel into, it didn't necessarily cure my ADD, my inability to focus for long periods of time. When I first realized that I could become a software developer and I started studying, it took me about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months of just constant studying, starting at a very small scale. Maybe I would try to sit down for 20 minutes at a time and focus. If you repeat that over and over again over the course of time, your brain sort of gets adapted, or your brain changes to actually be able to focus for longer and longer periods of time. And obviously there's some pains and growing pains in there that you're going to encounter. There's times where you're going to be really restless, so you can't actually sit down and do the work. But what helped me get through that is I always kept sight in my mind about what the ending result is, that I'm going to get this job that pays me really well, a career where it's not going to be some blue collar job and working the rest of my life. Maybe at 50 I'm going to, my knees are going to be hurting and I'm going to have arthritis or something like that. So I always thought about that, and it helped me to get through some of those painful periods. And the last thing I just say about this, again, this is just my experience of going through this process. I think when, looking back at how hard it was for me to focus, again, I think what's beautiful about programming, even though it does require your attention, right? In other words, you can't be distracted when you're programming. You should really be 100% focused. I think for people like myself who need that so badly, like just that one thing that we can focus on, it can help you to get through those problems where your mind wanders all over the place. So that's just basically my experience of having attention issues, being distracted constantly, having my mind that races. I hope that for some of you guys out there who can relate to what I'm going through can understand that maybe programming is still something that you can do. But ultimately, what I would say is try programming for yourself. Take a month of time where you're really going to spend a lot of time focusing and studying and seeing if you even like it. You may find that after a month, you will see that programming is just not something that you were either cut out to do, meaning that your personality just may not mesh with programming. Maybe you just don't like the actual act of programming. If that's the case, then you just took a month of your life to try to do it, and you can move on with some other ambitions for your career. So I hope this video is helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go ahead and leave a like down below. Also, please leave any comments if you agree or disagree. Just want to share your experience of having ADD or some form of attention disorder, and let us know what it's like. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Oh, and by the way, before I head out here, I do have a free Facebook group for those of you who want to get more content from me. In that group, I share a lot of high quality content. I try to keep out the spammers. So if you're interested in joining that group, go ahead and go to the link in the description below. You can go ahead and join it there. So other than that, thank you so much as always for watching, and peace out, guys.